Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box once the video has rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules in the Hangout. Number one, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show, as sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show. And one last time, if you are new to this channel or you have not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Mark, Doxy and Sleeping Warrior. So first of all, Mark, how are you doing?
Very well, thank you. And yourself?
Not too bad. I'm going to turn you up a little bit. You're a little bit muffled. How are you doing, Sleeping Warrior?
All is well, all is well.
Excellent. I don't know if it's mic placement, perhaps, Mark. We shall see.
Yeah, how's that? Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? Can you hear me?
Really, really muffly. I don't know why. Weird.
All right.
It's audible. It's just not. It doesn't sound particularly as good as what it was the other day.
All right. Okay. I'll speak up.
That's good enough?
Is that okay?
Yeah, we can hear you. I'll just turn you up a bit.
Okay. Cheers.
What do you know, Mark?
Hello, my good man. How are you?
I'm very well. No complaints. No complaints.
I'm just going to go back over my emails and remind myself of what. I remember. This is the gent from Belfast looking across the Isle of Man from the opposite side.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Yeah.
So what do you know?
Well, I briefly spoke to you last night on what's the other thing called?
Skype.
Skype, that's the very one, yeah. And you said that you'd had a bit of feedback from the ballers saying, no, that's not the calf of man.
Well, yeah, GeoStreamer asked for a copy of the composite that stitch that you'd put together.
Yes.
So I sent him it over, and he was quite confident in his assertion that you'd got it wrong. And I said, well, it seems to line up, although I agree there's some land that's not on there, but it appears to line up for me. And he said, no, I think he's got it wrong. And I said, okay. I said, I'll pass it back to him and I'll let you know what the crack is.
Well, there is room to question it because it was not as clear as I want it to be. I'm speaking from personal experience that I've been down there many times when it's very clear and it's just like a mill pond and you can actually see the calf of man. And I'll present that proof when the weather lets me.
Yeah, that's the same position I'm in. I know that I can get better. It's just I was at the end of the summer period and the weather was on the turn against me, so I wasn't able to get the best of footage. But as we get into spring and we get those crisp, warm spring mornings when you just had a cold evening, that's when I'll get it the best, I think.
Yeah, I'm the same. But it's not the shape of the Blackpool Tower. I mean, you got that from North Wales. How many miles away were you the other day?
Well, I was in a place called Hoylake in Wirral, which is not quite North Wales. It's technically Liverpool or Merseyside.
Yeah, I know it. Yeah.
But it's 30 miles away, and I have had a couple of guys email me about that, saying that they live in Llandudno, which is in Wales, and they can see it. And they sent me photos, and it's just astonishing that it can even be seen from there. It's crazy.
That is incredible. I would know Llandudno. But at the time, I would have known it. I would never have thought that is the Earth. Is there a curve there? Although I can't remember seeing the Blackpool Tower either.
The funny thing is, when me and Ranty were there, we asked the locals, "Could you see Blackpool Tower from here?"
Yeah.
And obviously, the locals, you would trust local knowledge, and basically everybody said no. And me and Ranty knew that you could, and nobody seemed to realise that you could see it. Not even on a clear day. Normally, they'd say on a clear day, yeah, you could see it.
Yeah, it's down to personal experience and being honest with yourself.
Well, notice how that when we were asking these people, they didn't say if the atmospheric refraction is favourable. They just said on a clear day, which is, of course, what everybody says, because nobody ever goes to the beach and says things like, well, if the non-standard refraction allows us to see such and such a thing, then we'll see it. But everybody says it on a clear day, we'll see it. Nobody ever mentions refraction or bendy light.
Yeah.
On a clear day.
And I'm sort of level with the south part of the Isle of Man, and I can see the north part as well. So there's a triangle going on there. And as Nathan has put forward, that the refraction would be variable all along the coast.
Yeah.
The entire coast. And it's not. It sits there really perfectly.
I know this is where it comes down to. Well, it can be explained by maths, Riley. And then you look at the maths, and yeah, sure, it may well explain something, but is it what we're looking at? Yeah. And for me, it's like, well, if you're going to explain stuff with maths, in other words, algebra, you've got to get the algebra right. It has to match what we see. Yeah. And just because it's explained by maths does not mean that it is the answer, because if it doesn't match reality, then it's wrong. It's that simple. And we were discussing yesterday, and I keep mentioning in this, that light bends up as well as down. In the context of algebra, that means there should be a plus stroke minus at the beginning of any formula. And we don't see that. We only see a continuous arcs going down in the form of 7/6R, which of course is nonsense. We see refraction soundly showed that light bends up as well as down, yet that's not accounted for in the algebra, which I find staggering.
Yeah, I was doing a bit of research on myself. I was thinking of the Pink Floyd album, Dark Side of the Moon. But you're sending light into an angle, and so it will bend at an angle. But when you're putting light into a right angle prism or a square a cube prism at right angle to it, then there's no bend, there's no refraction. But depending on where you put the light into the cube, you can get it bending upwards or downwards.
Yeah. Well, ultimately, I think that these ballers, they want us to move away from the Isle of Man observation because basically they don't want to talk about it.
Yeah.
But I'm still interested by it because ultimately it is something that we can look at, and there is a sweet spot. It seems to be sat right on the threshold of a sweet spot where ordinarily the atmospherics don't really allow you to see stuff because it's not clear enough on a normal day to see stuff. But on a clear day, we can see stuff that shows that the Earth's not a ball. That the Earth is not a ball, and they don't like it because they don't want it to be not a ball. They want their comfort zone, and that's why they want us to keep away from it. So, although we've
non-pass though, haven't we, on the Isle of Man?
Well, it's got to the point where it's the application of the weatherman's saying, which is what you see here is a mirage. That's the hologram stuff, fantasy stuff that Nathan refers to. We're applying the same concept to that island, which is, well, you're not really seeing the island; it's being loomed up from behind. Well, that's the mirage thing. So the Joshua Nowicki thing, that's the application of the same thing. And for me, when I look at that and I think, well, I can see that lighthouse without trying. That's not a mirage. I can tell a mirage. They shimmer, they move, they distort, and I'm looking at that lighthouse and it's solid. And I'm thinking that's not a hologram. It's not a mirage. It's the lighthouse. Well, they won't accept that because it doesn't support their model. Yet I look at that and I think, no, I see that because it's there.
I thought that was priceless yesterday.
Nathan thinks the same.
The guest yesterday showed us an image that was of something about 275 miles away. He said, well, why is the thing in the foreground bigger and why is it distorted and not in scale? And we're like, well, exactly. Why is it not in scale? It should be the case on the Isle of Man image that you have similar things going on if you want to claim refraction is to blame. Yet we don't get anything. It's scaled perfectly. How are you doing, Haunted House? Good to have you.
No sound.
Sorry, I muted myself. How you guys doing?
Very well. Good to have you.
Awesome.
Good to see you, man. You're up late.
Always. I don't sleep anymore. It's bored. Oh, it's kind of early, actually, for me. It's like 5:30.
Who's this new chat that's just come on?
Hey, Philip. How you doing?
Hey, can you hear me?
Very, very loud, yes.
Okay, good. Is this better?
A little bit.
Let me turn down my mic.
Haunted House is from America. He had trouble with his channel, and they've took it off him for a couple of months. But he's rejoined now, and he's realised that I'm on a different pseudonym, so he didn't know me from my new pseudonym. Did you get porn bombed or? Oh no, playing music.
Yeah, I got porn bombed. I'm not even using my camera. What the hell's going on?
Yeah, you are. We see
my right camera. That is good camera. You know, this guy brought me back when I was at the gates.
Skippy.
One of the coolest things I ever found.
Is it Skippy the kangaroo?
I don't think it is.
It's Anubis the kangaroo.
Okay.
It's a bronze. I found it the other day. It's really neat.
So have you found any curvature recently, Haunted?
The only curvature I've ever seen is in James Turrell's artwork, which I highly suggest anyone to check out if they want an interesting, exciting representation of a form of art that uses light in a way I've never seen before. It was like, I was so excited. I heard the name mentioned in a song by a band called Calexico. They're from New Mexico or Arizona. And the name of the song is Edge of the End of the World. It's a great song, great chord progression, great feel to it. But he says something about seeing something through James Turrell's eyes. And I was like, that's strange. Nobody really mentions a full name in a song like that. And I was like, that must be someone I got to check out. Check the guy out. I think he's like maybe in his late 60s now. And he does installations that have canopies, like enclosures, but with holes that you can see the sky. So they project light upwards at the roof while the light from the sky projects inwards, and it creates this really amazing contrast, like something along the lines of that, where it's like it takes on a spherical shape, but what you're looking at is a hole. You're looking at a hole in concrete that's looking up at the sky. Really cool effect. And the last installation he did is at a crater in Arizona called the Rodan Crater. And it's a series of like tunnels, walkways that you go through, and they all lead up, and it all lines up. It's neat stuff. James Turrell. But yeah, that's the only curvature I've seen. I don't think humans do curvature. I don't think it's necessary for us.
No, I agree.
You know, it doesn't really play a role in my life in any other way for things to be curved. It's not like an inherent need for me. I think we have a platform to live on, and that's about it. For it to turn under itself would be pointless.
So what about you, Philip? Have you found any curvature?
Have I found? Well, I don't do observations, so I'm terrible at taking photos, and I don't have the money to have a camera, but I do like analyzing data. So actually, I was wondering, Riley, do you have any images where you can see the peaks of the mountains very easily?
Not yet, no. Not yet, no. I can get them. I'm not. I mean, don't forget this. The original video only went out the week before Christmas, and obviously since then the weather's not really been great yet. It's on its way up, the weather, but it's not good enough really yet to see. As Al K found out when he went back to view, the weather wasn't clear enough to even see the island, let alone see any part of it in detail. Every now and again, you'd see little like tippy tops of stuff, but it just wasn't enough. So the short answer to your question is no, not yet.
Can I just interject for a second here? I think if anyone's actually trying to observe the planet, the place we live, the shape of the place we live, they're either going to get it confused with local topology, or they don't really understand the scope of just how big the place we are. Maybe they haven't traveled as far out, their radius of life experience, existence. They haven't, maybe they've never been on a plane, or maybe they're just someone who's not really inclined in that way, that understands spatial differences, tactile differences, where an architect would have a brain for that sort of thing. Like a mathematician or understands numbers. An architect understands space, negative space, perspective, relationship with angles, geometry. But for someone who has no inclination towards it, I think the best advice is just go with your observations. Forget about flat Earth and globe Earth. Just go with your observations, because it's an amazing conversation to have. If you're not curious about this,
absolutely. If you didn't have any preconceived ideas, if you didn't have any preconceived ideas, or if you weren't programmed as a child, whether like what the shape of the Earth actually was, and you went to it with an open mind to see whether it was a particular shape or what, and nobody told you what shape it was, you would come out with the logical conclusion that it was flat.
I don't even think anybody would ever consider shape. They would consider what comes next. You know what I mean? But I understand what you're saying. I think they would try to travel and think it's endless. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think,
and it is really, because we have the ability to keep walking. Eventually, we'll hit water, and then we get in the boat, and then we keep going, and then we hit snow. If I could speculate,
if you're not talking. Just we're getting a bit of echo, so just try and keep on mute if you're not talking.
If I don't think it's going to be a method of I think it might be the gentleman on the left, Mark.
Yeah.
Pop yourself on mute, Mark, if you would.
Yeah, I think it might be going.
Sorry, did you mute yourself?
Yeah.
We can hear Haunted House's voice coming back through your microphone, that's all.
I don't think it's going to be a matter of flying over Antarctica so much as it is weaving our way through ice channels. I think it's going to take some slick navigation, because when you look back at Shackleton, I might have that wrong. I think, did Shackleton do the Arctic or the Antarctic?
Sure.
Either or. The ones who went over Canada and tried to get through Greenland and all that, they got stuck so many times, and they were so disoriented in where they were that, I shouldn't say over again. That would be a fear if I was a captain of, if I had a ship and that was going to be,
well,
I was going to set sail, try to figure it out, how to get past Antarctica.
I tend to think of it now like the opening scene in SimCity, the computer game SimCity. Imagine that you have a flat plane that you've just like made flat all the way through. You put a couple of lakes in, they represent the oceans. A couple more lakes in, they represent the seas. A couple more lakes in, they represent the big rivers and stuff. But essentially, if you make your own terrain, you do it on a flat plane. But in the real world, we know that the sun melts ice. So we know that the oceans essentially sit on top of the ice. And we know that if the sun is able to melt ice, it makes sense that the path of the sun would melt ice in a particular way. And if the path of the sun is circular, you can expect to find a circular path where the ice melts, which is the claim, which is the ice wall, which we have to consider is the realistically, logically, and progressive position to take. And I'm not saying it is, but it is the point where I'm at, where I'm thinking, well, the sun must melt the ice to a point, and then there must be a divide where it can no longer melt the ice. Therefore, there must be an ice wall. But then if you zoom out, and then like that there's worlds, there are cities next to us. Well, that's what I think it probably is. I think they're probably showing us in SimCity that that's the world that we actually live in. It's just covered in ice, and the sun melts the ice, but that's not part of the SimCity game.
Do you think any of this is inhabited?
Any of this is inhabited?
Yeah, any of the land that you would, like, if you could get past into unexplored territory.
It would require another sun, wouldn't it? An Nibiru kind of sun. Not necessarily an Nibiru as in like an angry dwarf sun, but like it would have to be a sun like ours, just circling over another plane like ours. And fundamentally, we would have to have another sun to provide the melting of the ice to provide life.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think darkness would start to encroach, like a wall of darkness.
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
You'd get a wall of darkness, yeah, because the sun can only go so far because of,
like 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock sort of thing, positions, or 3 and 9 o'clock.
light is subject to the diminishing rule of the what's it called? What's the diminishing rule? It's called
Inverse square law.
The inverse square law, yeah. So light is subject to that diminishing return, which is the further away you go from the source, the more it spreads out and the weaker it becomes, to the point where it literally, you're not going to see it anymore. Now, the claim is by ballers that we will always see the focal point from that light, but it's nonsense. You can't.
There's also scattering in the atmosphere, right? Too, light gets scattered by the air molecules.
Well, no, I think the light exists outside of anything else. There's blockage, though.
Well, it has to. I mean, we know that light interacts with matter, right? Like that's how solar panels work. Like light gets absorbed into the material and then is turned into electricity, motion of electrons. Like that's a physical effect.
To say we have any understanding of light is,
but we do.
Really, it is a first mistake.
We don't. We have an explanation, but we don't have evidence.
Right. We have
we've measured the best. Stuff. It's called the photoelectric effect.
Yeah, but
it's something that's been measured. I've actually done it myself.
It relies on
measure.
Hold on, Philip's
really patient. When I hear what he's got to say. Material.
Can we hear what Philip's got to say?
So you're saying electricity is light?
No, I'm saying electricity can light can be converted into electricity.
Correct.
So everything is really
energy.
Agreed. Light can carry information with it as well, but that doesn't mean that we know what light is.
Well, I mean, the photoelectric effect is well described physically by photons being absorbed by electrons in the open.
Science's biggest mistake: the effect explaining the cause.
Huh?
Show me evidence of a photon.
There are single photon detectors.
Go on, show us what a photon looks like.
Well, we don't know what it looks like because it's one photon. You can't look at a single photon. You have to look at hundreds of millions of photons.
Why not?
That's what light is.
There you go.
Don't you understand that right there, though? But right there, that's something, though, a smart guy like yourself, because you sound like a smart person, why not just take a moment and realize, like, hey, you have every right to scrutinize that right there. You know, you're kind of taking someone's word for it. Because once we enter the realm of the hypothetical, we're now talking about atoms and particles again. And quantum is all of it is theoretical.
It's not theoretical. I know people who do experiments where they measure the randomness of atoms on an atomic scale.
But that doesn't concern me at this moment, though. You know what I mean?
And it's not relevant to the discussion on light.
Yeah.
Well,
padding.
If we understand how well enough to actually do experiments and make predictions with our current model and understanding of light, I don't see how we don't understand light. You know, like if we can devise any experiment which actually matches reality and it matches the model, then how is that not an understanding of what light actually is?
Well, it relies on the premise that a photon is the thing. What's a photon?
Yeah, there's no bit, there's no piece of light. You can't.
We can measure a single photon. We can get a detector which clicks every time a single photon hits it.
Okay.
How do you know it's a photon that's hitting it?
Because you can turn on and off the source of light. You can say, if I turn off the source of light, then I don't get any photons anymore. But then I turn it on very slightly so that only one comes out, and you hear click, click,
sure.
Click, click.
So if somebody's knocking on my door,
and then I turn it up and I get more clicks. Click, 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 click. And then if I turn it up more, I get even more clicks. And eventually you'll see that the light source is completely on and you're hearing tons of clicks. And then you're like, oh, that's light. That's what light is. It's a ton of photons hitting the detector, which is my eye.
Okay. So we can detect something, but we call it a photon, but we can't show what it looks like. We can only describe what it does.
Sure.
It sounds a bit like refraction.
Don't get refraction confused with diffusion or diffraction or
diffraction
or rarefaction.
Well, it seems like a convenient excuse to explain what we see, but we can't actually prove what we're explaining.
So how can you see something which you have to have enter your eye in order to see it? If I don't have enough sensitivity in my eye to detect a single photon, then how will I ever see a single photon?
That's exactly why the stars are not millions and millions of miles away.
Yeah. Yeah, we can see those stars, so they got to be close.
How do you know?
Because the idea of anything more than, I don't know, a couple hundred miles, I'll just throw that out there, is ludicrous. I have no idea what that looks like. I've never measured it. I have no way.
It's not going through atmosphere. It's going through the vacuum of space. There's no attenuation of the light.
But you've already assumed that space is a vacuum because someone told you that.
Yeah, it's the current model, right? He's applying the current model.
Like, we got to, you know, even for yourself, you got to get away from just taking people's word. We live in a world where the deception is running rampant. It's everywhere.
So me being an actual PhD physicist, you don't think that I'm not in on the conspiracy myself?
No, I think you're blinded by the world in which you're in. If
really? So I know these people, and they're all blind too. These
Here's the thing.
Smart people who have thought about this stuff for years and years.
Here's the thing.
I thought about stuff for years.
You're a PhD physicist, right? And you're going to be sat in a room where all the PhD physicists, let's just say there's 50 of them, and you're in a convention, and you're all talking about the topic that you all understand, you all trust, believe, and test and do your whatever your thing is in work, you're all doing on the same thing, right? And then I go in and say, can any of you prove a photon? No, I'm not going in there.
How you doing? Can you hear us? Hello, Hellboy.
Same thing. And then I go in and say, can
one
any
second.
of you prove a photon?
Could
No,
you?
I'm not going in there.
Can you mute your watch page, Hellboy?
Hello.
Can you mute your watch page?
Hey, what's up?
We hear your watch page.
Yeah, what's up?
We hear your watch page playing.
So I was just about to ask, is this the point where we get obfuscated? Because you can tell when it's going to happen. Well, he's a prime suspect for obfuscation. We're just getting to a good conversation, and then somebody comes in and derails it, and Hellboy shows up, and we know what would probably have happened. But anyway, point being, right, so I'll walk into the room, not being a physicist, not being a PhD physicist, going into the room with somebody that's got a perception, view, and belief that evidence is stronger than rhetoric, and I'll say, right, one of you's show me what a photon is, and not one of you's in the room will be able to do it. And then all of you's will go silent, and then you'll all go, what a dickhead. And there'll be murmurings, and ultimately I'll be discredited by consensus. So the bandwagon fallacy will be used against me, and I'll be discredited, not because I can't ask for evidence, but because you guys don't accept that I can't ask for evidence. And that's where my problem lies.
So the problem is, I just explained to you how a photon detector.
I'm not asking for explanation, no. I'm asking
according to you. According to you.
But if our understanding of light wasn't correct, then that photon detector wouldn't behave as if it was how it was designed. Like that device was designed.
Though, real fast, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Your understanding of light, what would you say would be the best aid to getting to where you are now in your confidence of your understanding?
I would.
What works do you read? Or what sign? Who would you say? Go to this guy if you want to get to where I am.
Right. So if you want to understand light, you need to understand electromagnetism. Because
I'm asking for people, like names of authors, scientists, teachers.
Okay. So a good book on light is called Landau and Lifshitz.
Say it again.
Landau and Lifshitz. Classical Theory of Fields.
Can you spell it just because it's just so
yeah. Landau is Landau, and then Lifshitz is Lifshitz. Yeah. And he has these two authors have a bunch of books on physics which are very well, very, very good. Actually, I would also recommend you read the classical mechanics book.
Look like textbooks here.
They are physics textbooks, but they describe it's not even quantum mechanics. It's all, classical theory of electromagnetism, which is I guess, probably a little more easy to start out with than going straight to quantum.
So why not take what you know from this and say, okay, I heard their story. Now I'm going to go over here and take these people's take on it. You know,
Oh, I have.
Whoever, you know, have you ever read any Walter Russell, like The Secret of Light?
The Secret of Light. No, I haven't.
Hello, barbecue sauce. Can you hear us?
Well, I highly suggest you take a look at that book. Walter Russell was a polymath, born, I think, like 1920s. He died in the 60s. He was pretty much, I think, just about everything he went about doing, he became a master of, so to speak.
Like a painter?
A painter, sculptor, scientist, philosopher, artist.
Oh, he was born in musician.
But his level of skill at each one of these traits was like Mozart level. Like just about.
There's a YouTube video called Secret of Light. Oh, okay. I'll check it out.
Do you mind
it's a book.
Sorry,
it's not a YouTube video.
It seems to me like Philip's point's been completely obfuscated. So he's had an assertion put to him that photons are made up, and he said, "I've got a machine that can detect them," and it seems like that point's been completely ignored.
Well, let me come back to that point, Philip. You've just given us the author and book title of the leading theory on light, correct?
It's not the leading. It's actually very old, so it's.
That's okay.
Okay, well, it's electromagnetism. It's classical electromagnetism. So
okay, well,
look up something.
Could I respond? Changed. Could I respond to that with a similar book of the nature that I work in? It's by a guy called Andrew Chew, CHOO. It's called Evidence, and in that book, it talks about the ranking of evidence, and it talks about strong evidence and not strong evidence, and evidence that relies on like actual empiricism is strong. Evidence that relies on theoretical stuff that lacks empiricalness isn't considered to be strong. Is it the case that you accept weak evidence because it explains things and it makes sense logically and reasonably, but you lack the empiricism that's required for it to be proof?
So if I build this detector, right, is that not empirical?
The detector is empirical.
Okay. So if the detector is designed in such a way that if it clicks, it's receiving a signal from a photon.
Right. So if it can detect...
Yes. And if I get clicks, does that mean that photons do exist or they don't exist?
Right. But light, to describe what light is...
The effect can't explain the cause. It doesn't work that way.
But if...
That's what science's biggest mistake was.
Hang on. You can't explain what light is by referencing clicks. If I'm asking you for a photon, I don't want you to say the answer is, well, the machine clicks. I want you to show me what a photon actually is.
Oh, come on, that's a bit unreasonable, because, you know, that's easy enough to translate a light signal into something that's audible just so you can represent it in a different way. I mean, that's a bit unreasonable, don't you think?
No, because then we can translate Isle of Man into something that we can see, which is refraction, and then claim that it's therefore a ball.
Or I could say if someone's knocking at my door, I can say it's that one person, because, well, it's someone.
Okay, well, you've seen a Geiger counter. You've seen a Geiger counter, though, right?
If your door only knocks for a very particular person, if you design your door such that only Bob gets a chance to knock on the door, then you're going to know it's Bob.
Yeah, but the point is...
I'll never know what Bob is.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
But if I know who Bob is, right?
I'll never know Bob, though. I would have to know him first.
So describe Bob to me then. Tell me what Bob... Show me a picture of Bob. The only evidence you've got is clicks. How do you make Bob out of clicks?
Well, I had to design the detector, right?
Right, but
so
if you detect him, Bob, if you detect him, Bob, that's not answering the question, is it?
Well, if I know enough to build a device which clicks, which knocks only when Bob knocks, then I need to know enough about Bob to be able to do that. Correct?
They're saying you know exactly what a photon is to design the machine to detect photons, and then you present the machine as proof of photons. Is that right?
Well,
I'm
there's
sorry.
a whole bunch of other stuff that goes into building this detector, not just understanding what a photon is, but also understanding the atomic structure of the atom, right? There's like a whole bunch of science that actually goes into this, and
Maybe
if none of that worked, then the device wouldn't function like we
Philip,
expected.
we're moving away from the point. We've got to the point where Bob's at the door and we're hearing the clicks. So we're asking you to tell us what Bob is. And the only thing that you can prove is that the machine is clicking. We accept that there is science that is able to develop the machine and it clicks when it receives the light. Our eyes do the same. When we receive light, we see the light. So we're at the same point. But tell us what light is.
Light is electromagnetic waves.
Explain darkness too.
Darkness is the absence of light.
Well, then light is what? The absence?
No, light is
describing
waves in the electromagnetic field. And if there are no waves in the electromagnetic field, then there is no light.
Can we see darkness?
Hold on. I'm a bit confused.
By definition, you can't,
hold on.
because
Sorry,
your
Philip,
eyes need light to see.
I just want to get this
But aren't
clear.
we
So,
experiencing
is it a
Oh, yeah,
photon
we're moving
or is
away
it a
from the
wave?
original topic.
We've got two different answers now. So you're saying it's a wave, but a minute ago you were detecting something that was a photon. So I don't follow.
It's because it's quantum mechanical.
Theoretical.
So wait, is it a wave?
Again, it's both. It's both. Yeah.
I think, Philip, you sound like a smart guy, dude. It's total. I mean, at this point, maybe for the sake of, people listening and like, they got me. I would, it would blow my mind to hear you go, okay, you guys are right. Fuck it.
Hang on.
Okay.
There is another thing.
Sorry, Nathan.
Let me just pick on this. He's just said that it's both, right? So that takes us squarely into the double slit experiment, which I'm sure Philip's familiar with. Philip, as a PhD level physicist, what's your take on the double slit experiment? How do you interpret its results?
What do you mean? How do I interpret its results?
You're familiar with the double slit experiment, right?
Yes, I'm familiar with it.
Right. So there's two interpretations. Which one is the one that you would prefer?
What are the two interpretations of which you speak of?
Well, one is that light behaves like a wave, and as the photon goes through the slit, and then as it goes through one slit, we get a channel, but as it goes through two slits, it's clear that it forms part of a wave. But then by science, because the definition of light by science is that it's a particle, yet it has no mass. That conflicts with the wave theory or the wave observation from the double slit experiment. Therefore, the second interpretation would be that it rejects the original or the primary assertion by science that it's a particle. So it's like a double-edged sword. It works one way, but then refutes the other.
Can I present my screen, actually?
Yeah.
Okay. So what I'm going to show you is an experiment where they actually do the double slit experiment, but with single photons.
Well, they did do the double slit experiment with single photons.
What is a photon? To understand what you're saying, I still need to understand what that thing is. I understand the idea of it, but
I think we're getting squarely to it.
It's
addressing
weird.
the double
It's
slit
quantum
experiment with single
mechanical, right?
photons. Can't get much better than that. Let's. When you're ready to present, Philip, just let me know and I'll put your screen up.
I don't think there's anything wrong with challenging this idea.
No, of course. I'm not saying that. It's just.
But you kind of seem like stuck. Like you don't want to attack this thing. Like turn around and say, hey, these people online are making a point here.
Well, I mean, there's a difference between understanding exactly how what is a particle wave, what is particle wave duality versus does it make predictions which we observe, right?
All right.
I'm with you.
We're experiencing all this. We name these things. We come up with these words to explain. Humans do. There's just stuff, and then there's us experiencing it. Are we creating it, or is it creating us? Or I think it's a combination of both, and it's really not even relevant. It doesn't matter to me. But now that we have tools and like toys and stuff to play with, and they react differently.
Okay,
to this
can you see
phenomenon.
my
So can you make it full screen?
screen?
It's up on screen, but if you can make it full screen, Philip, that'd be brilliant.
Sorry, my computer's lagging a lot because of there's too many tabs open. All right, full screen. Hopefully it will actually let me do this. Photons hitting the screen, right? The little dots of light are photons which have hit the screen. And so far it just looks like just random noise. But if you wait long enough, you'll see the pattern.
This is not behind any slit, no. This is just without any slit.
No, this is photons going through a slit, but you're looking at the points of impact of each individual photon.
Okay, I can see the pattern emerging.
Yeah, it's the interference, right?
Yep. So when the photon hits this image, when it hits the I think it's some sort of film, then it becomes particle-like because you're observing the particle, the photon as a particle. But then while it's propagating through space, it's behaving like a wave. So that's kind of the interpretation. So it's only when you make the observation, only when the photon interacts with something does it know that it needs to be localized at some point. And the probability distribution of where the photon will get localized is given by the wave function of that.
Sorry, I missed that last sentence. It's given by what?
So the quantum theory predicts the probability distribution of where the photon will be at any given point, but it can't give you the exact location. So that's kind of the particle waveness of the photon. It's because it's actually random. So only when we do tons of observations do we see that this probability distribution builds up. And that distribution actually exactly matches quantum mechanics.
Yeah, that was my understanding of the end conclusion of the double slit experiment. Essentially, the observation is the thing that makes the difference.
Right, and observation is defined, and you have to be very careful when you actually define what observation means. So typically what it means is that there is some interaction with a device. The particle interacts with the device in such a way that it gets stuck in a particular quantum state.
Nath, if I drop out of this call, could I rejoin on Skype? Because I want to play a file that's got sound.
Yeah, don't see why not. Just drop and
I
I'll
wouldn't
call you on
stop.
Skype.
I gotta get Skype on back on my laptop, and I'll send that to you, Anthony.
Okay. I've tried to find you on Skype, but there's 4 of you, and I don't know if they're all you.
Jonathan Vincent 94 probably.
Well, just so I can say thank you for that, Philip. That was a very concise explanation. Brilliant.
Yeah, you're welcome. No problem.
Right, I'll drop out of this and I'll rejoin on Skype. Give me 2 secs.
Where are you from, Philip? If you don't mind me asking.
I'm from the United States. I live
What
in.
state?
I'm from Michigan originally, but I live in Massachusetts now.
Oh, cool.
Come on, computer, don't do this to me. So the reason why I was interested in the peaks was particularly for comparing the globe and the flat Earth models side by side, because there's very particular predictions for the globe model and the flat Earth model when you know, like, let's say the heights of peaks.
What do you mean globe?
I mean the currently accepted radius.
Have you seen that?
Have I seen it?
Yeah.
Have I seen
I don't know what
the
people mean when they say like this ball idea. Because you do realize the conversation like ends right there. Because
because I
flat we
haven't
can see.
seen it.
Right. It's like a predisposed idea that you've chosen to believe. Whereas,
Well, I mean, if you ignore the fact that we went into space, sure, yeah, I guess you have to kind of go with terrestrial observations.
Who's we?
Well, then technically
We, as in
those
everybody,
people,
right? Everyone has to go with terrestrial observations if you just ignore space, right? Like that's by definition.
Oh, I mean, as you said, we have been to space. Have you been to space? Haunted House, have you been to space?
I've never been to space. I've never seen a ball.
Philip,
either.
you've been to
I've
space?
seen flat land. You know,
Right. Okay. So yes,
So
I have
just to
never
be clear,
personally
we haven't been to space at all.
and neither have I.
No, none of us have. So when you say we have been to space, no, that's not true.
Okay. I meant we in terms of the human race.
Right.
That's
No, I
not
don't
true
buy that either.
I understand what you're saying. I'm not being facetious, but that's
No, I
people
understand.
have-
I understand why you don't believe
they've
that.
been in rocket ships. Why
I
take a
understand.
rocket? You think a balloon wouldn't that be a better choice? With some kind of capsule, some kind of
Right. I'm sorry to do this to you, but before we get into low-level NASA debunking with someone who's, let's be honest, far more capable than doing this, so I want to keep on track. So I'm going to share the screen so that you can see what Sleeping Warrior's got up. If we do descend into NASA debunking, then fine, but while Sleeping Warrior's waiting in the wings to show something, I'd rather just keep on with that.
I'd rather not.
I'm sure you don't want to be a debunking NASA or fighting against
I
NASA
don't. To be honest, I don't know enough about any of that stuff to be able to say otherwise.
Fair enough.
You know about credibility, right?
Sure, I know about. Yeah, let's just not. I know about credibility, right? And
Well, that's what this all comes down to. It has nothing to do with NASA. It just has to do with logical credibility and who you
so
want
how
to
do
give
you
that.
determine credibility of something? That's
Lies.
my
Nothing has credibility.
Okay.
Nothing has credibility. People could have some credibility. They could say things that make sense, and I could choose to trust them. I usually do choose. I'm not that cynical about things. But when money's involved and control, yeah, I can see how things can go wrong. I can see how stories are told, and I can see how agendas are driven, especially with technology. And when those who have it, the ones who don't have it, life's going to be made a lot more difficult. Because the ones who are in control aren't going to share. I mean, we all know that.
Yeah.
When you're at the top, you're staying there. You can do everything you can to stay there. So when a PR firm pops up that can literally convince people from the 60s that whatever's on TV is reality, and then so many people believe it that it's now truth, and the consensus dictates reality. And 50 years later, we're still there. We really haven't grown as a population at all. Now it's time to respect the fact that we can all make our own observations and stop looking to authority figures, especially ones that we all, have our own criticisms about, political leaders, and we need to take back our own reality.
Right.
Take back our own authority.
Right. So what about the authority of like engineers and stuff? People who like design
I'm an
devices
engineer.
and things.
I'm an engineer.
So I'm going to
I've
defer to your
designed
authority
things.
when you design something, right?
Say that again.
I'm going to appeal to your authority and your skill in designing things, correct?
On the things that I've designed.
Yeah.
Not me.
And and if I look at your work and I see that they're designed very well, then I'll say you're a competent engineer, and that's great. And I will trust that you will make good things in the future. Right?
Yeah. But if I start making lofty, if I start telling stories about stuff that could easily be, I'm trying to stay away from going there.
That could easily be fabricated?
Yeah, exactly. Mass media is what, mass media is what's got a hold on all of us. Like take
So
the incident in Florida,
right.
that whole thing. Nobody would know about it if it wasn't on the news. Like it wouldn't affect anyone. But the fact that it's put on TV, now it's starting to change people's worldview around. People are now going to are going to lean towards fear, caution, doubt in society.
But do you think the
slowly seep
reason why
into
they're
a
doing
person's
that
state.
is because they want to control people, or because maybe that's what
absolutely.
sells more? That's what sells TV. Like, what about market forces in terms of, like, you know, if I present only bad stories, right? People are going to be like drawn to that and say, oh, I need to know what's happening.
But see, that's the thing. People don't need to know what's happening. They need to know what's happening in their own life. Then they become the story.
No, I completely agree. I'm just saying, like, there's other motivations for having mass media other than just trying to control the population. I mean, of course, it's not to say that there are not things out there where the companies are intentionally trying to control how you feel, right? Like advertising is like an incredibly good case for why how companies and advertisers and these shows try to make an emotional appeal to people because they're trying to get you to do something. But the reason why they're doing that is not necessarily because they want to control you. They want to make you buy something. They want to make you feel something.
If somebody makes me buy something, they've controlled me. They've made me do something.
Right. But the only reason why they want you to buy something is because they have something to sell. They want money. They don't want to like make you docile and believe in like some like religious scientism, right? They want you to just buy their product.
A habit would do them good. If I start getting the mentality that material objects are important because of something somebody sold me, and never looking back at my own life saying, none of this has changed my life for the better at all. I just have a bunch of stuff, which I do actually have a bunch of stuff, and it means nothing to me. Absolutely nothing. In the moment when I saw it, it was just shiny toy, shiny object. But when I really look at it, it's all unnecessary.
But why is that not a reason for why? I mean, that's more evidence for like the type of economy we want, right? Like we want to have a consumeristic economy where we buy things.
I don't.
And that's
I want
by
people
design.
to be happy. I want people to be happy.
I want people to be happy too.
I want people to
be able to trust others too.
Now, trust, that's asking way too much, because I want to be able to tell my own little lies. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's when it gets carried away and we're dealing with mass level deception and getting to the point where if you're not agreeing with people, it could be a dangerous situation. You could lose your job. If I say something like what happened in Sandy Hook didn't happen, which it obviously didn't. And I'll say that with certainty because, well, I'm not an idiot. And, well, maybe I shouldn't say it I could say that with certainty. And I could say it because I can trust myself. I'm allowed to. I give myself that. I'm the authority that says I'm allowed to say that.
Because you have evidence for it, right?
I don't need evidence. It's life experience. It's gut instinct. It's that thing that, like, dogs do. They were never taught to do something, but they do it anyway. Like burying stuff. It's instinctual. It's already there. But when your gut tells you something, your brain's still off in la la land. And we don't trust our gut. We get all wobbly and stuff. We start to intellectualize it. And if people really acted on their own impulses, I think we'd be in a better place. People would actually say no more often. People would trust themselves, and then they would have more confidence. And then they wouldn't allow the TV. They wouldn't turn on the TV, first of all, because they wouldn't need to. Their life would be more enriched. The people around them would have something more to say than, hey, did you see what was on TV? And probably communities would start to develop, become stronger, or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's actually pretty strong evidence for how TV has been used to replace human interactions and creating emotional bonds with people. There's like psychological evidence for this, but yeah, I don't know. I mean,
but it's here, so I deal with it.
Yeah,
TV
let's go on to what Riley was talking about, because that was a very long digression. It was very interesting, though.
Okay. We'll have to share screens again, Nath. Let me go back to it. All right. So the double slit experiment is my most interesting thing in physics that I am most interested in, because it kind of goes against everything that everybody argues, that light travels in straight lines, that it's a particle, it doesn't have any mass. Whatever preconceptions or preconceived ideas that you may or may not have about light, you're better off probably watching this with no preconceptions, because it's confusing. Now, it's mainly for the people that are not familiar with the double slit experiment. For Philip and Nathan, I'm sure, will be well familiar with this. But this is an unlisted video on my channel, and it was aimed at me and Nathan. We had a conversation about it a few months ago, and it opens up a can of worms, because it's really it basically contradicts. It's self-contradictory, and it basically confuses the hell out of everybody. And there's no real point talking about it, because we don't get to any point where we get a consensus. It ends up being totally divisory. And I'll just play it for the benefit of everyone in chat. It's only for 4 minutes. I'll stop it periodically so we can discuss points. It's really good.
Know about or remember. You may know about or remember one of the most famous experiments in the history of physics, the experiment of Thomas Young, the double slit experiment. It was a real coup in physics and led many scientists into the study of quantum mechanics. If you throw solid balls at a shield with a slit cut into it, a single diffuse strip designating the strike points will appear on the screen behind the shield. If there are 2 slits in the shield, then there will be 2 strips. But how will waves behave if aimed at the shield? They will pass through the slot and spread out. The greatest impact of the waves will be in the line of the slit, as in the case with the balls. But if you add a second slit, everything changes. A number of alternating interference strips will appear on the projection screen. And when we shine light on the 2 strips, this is exactly what happens. And this is how Mr. Young proved the wave theory of light. If light were corpuscular, like a particle, instead of wave-like, it would behave like the balls, and the screen would show 2 strips of light corresponding to the 2 slits. That didn't happen.
Right, so he's just said then, and I'll replay this now. It says, if light were corpuscular, then it would create 2 slits. But that didn't happen. So it means that light cannot be corpuscular. However, we see corpuscular rays. So in real world, we can see corpuscular rays that indicate that light is corpuscular. But then we see that this guy's telling us that light's not corpuscular. Therefore, corpuscular rays can't be actually corpuscular rays. There must be something else. But let's hear what he says again.
If light were corpuscular, like a particle, instead of wave-like, it would behave like the balls, and the screen would show 2 strips of light corresponding to the 2 slits. That didn't happen. If light...
So basically, at this point, he's saying that light's not a particle. But a lot of people on the ball Earth side basically say that light is a particle because it behaves like a particle. But this double slit experiment is indicating that it doesn't behave like a particle, and that we don't have corpuscular rays, but we clearly see corpuscular rays in real world. So at this point, it's confusing, right? It seems to be contradicting what we see real world. Would you agree so far?
Actually, it's actually fairly straightforward. So corpuscular rays, right? They're rays coming out of in the direction of the sun, right? But they tend to spread out, right? If I look at the rays, they're spreading out away in a fan, like away from you. So the 2 left and right. Riley?
Yeah, I'm listening.
So what you're not... Yeah, but what you're seeing is you're not seeing those rays of light coming outward. You're seeing light scattering off of the air in the sky, which is directing the light rays into your eye, right? Because the light rays are divergent. You'd have to be kind of on both sides Like you'd have to once to see those two rays.
Yeah, hang on. We're not
Scattering off
seeing
the atmosphere
light
and
diverging.
it's going into your eye.
Yeah, but we're not seeing light diverging with crepuscular rays, because that would indicate that the shadows would be curved. We see straight shadows.
Let's just assume for the sake of argument that the Earth is flat, right? And the sun is close. I'm just talking about the physical mechanics of how you see crepuscular rays. You're not seeing the rays, you're seeing the light scattering off of stuff in the atmosphere hitting your eye. So that's the light is traveling in that direction, yeah.
We're actually just seeing the particles, like the things, the atmospheric dust.
Yes, yeah, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying.
The light is something we haven't figured out yet.
No, it makes perfect sense, right? The light is emanating from the source and it's scattering off of things in the atmosphere. And that's what we see. We don't actually see the light directly. We see it scattered off of things, right? Because that's how we see stuff.
So does light travel in straight
matter?
lines?
No, light does not matter.
It's not the solidification of matter?
What? No, light is...
I'm sorry, I got that one backwards. Matter is the solidification of light?
No, they're different. Because light is special compared to regular matter. It's made up of a different thing.
Special? But that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of, right?
Right.
It's God?
No, it's just different than regular matter. Right? Because have you seen a light ray sit still?
I've never seen a light ray. I've seen dust.
Right, exactly. See matter, right? Light, and you experience light.
You cut out for a second there, actually.
Oh, sorry. So you can only see light. But the reason why you see stuff is because it interacts with matter, right? Something reflects off of the mirror.
Why differentiate the two? It's all something.
Because there's a very particular process in which you perceive light, right? Light has to come into your eye, be processed by cells.
Well, no. I see stuff and then I don't see stuff.
No, but we understand the biological processes which underlie our eye, right? Like,
hey, Natsa, how you doing?
I wouldn't really know. I've never, they say rods and cones are in our eyes. That doesn't really make much sense to me.
But we at least know that it's optical, right? Because we know how light behaves in optics. Right? How do we design glasses if we don't know how light behaves, right? Like I wear glasses because my eyes don't function properly because my lenses aren't shaped correctly because of how I was born.
So I'm looking at glass.
Just bend the light in such a way that I can see properly.
So it's bending the matter.
No, it's bending light.
What's bending then? What's giving you the idea of bending?
The
simulation of bending.
Of the refraction in my glasses.
Of what?
Like I shine a laser through my glasses and it's going to get bent.
Think of it like a piece of glass or like a diamond, for example.
Right. So you're talking about something you see through a lens, which is matter. So once again, matter is light.
No, matter is interacting with the light, causing it to bend.
But we still haven't identified what light is, so you can't say that.
But if I take a laser and I know the laser is light.
You know the laser is light.
Matter.
Coherent light or incoherent light? Is the laser like the sun?
The laser is coherent light. Well, you want to go into the physics of how a laser works? I mean, that's quantum mechanical.
No, don't need to know that. I think the laser is a physical object. Laser is matter.
The laser itself is, yes.
But it's made out of
beam
atoms.
Of photons. Yeah, the beam of photons has no mass.
So you've localized what the sun does inside of a little laser.
No, it's different than what has.
The mechanism's different.
But the colors that come out of a laser beam is one color. The light is giving off. The light from the sun is a whole spectrum of colors. It's a whole bunch of colors. You you'll see it. The light gets refracted into a rainbow, right? And that suggests that the sun is actually emitting all of these different types of colors of light simultaneously. So it's a laser.
Right, I'm sorry to interrupt you guys there and do a very quick link as we've got about an hour left on this live stream. Hope you're all enjoying the debate thus far. If you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, and a link in the info box once the video has rendered. If you'd like to join the discussion, be sure to mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below the video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. There are a couple of rules, however. Please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Massive thanks to all who have done so already. Sharing the show obviously increases the chances of a more diverse panel by increasing the live audience, so please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth debate. As I say, there is approximately 1 hour left on this live stream.
Wow, that was nice.
Yeah, he's very, very well practiced at that.
He had a nice beat, good cadence.
Anyways.
Yeah, so photons don't have mass.
But we don't know what photons are. You guys know so much about photons, but you can't show us one.
I got a question for you.
I think it's a hypothetical thing in order to facilitate your argument. And that's
if I was to get a
convenient.
high-powered laser, I'd blind you. That would be showing you light. But no, you can do it. For example, there was a few
You would also
experiments
need crystals,
done a few years ago.
crystals, gases. You would need electricity to excite those gases and all that. Now you were talking about electricity here.
So how
Laser beams.
how would I be able to even without knowing how photons interact with atoms? Because we know what we have to know the atomic structure of the atom in order to create a laser beam of a particular wavelength. That's details of the atom that we need to know. And if it just so happened that somehow
Once again, why stop at the atom?
Light and how light interacts with atoms, it just coincidentally matches reality just by some miracle out of all the other possible theories out there. There's infinite number of possible theories out there, but the one that we stumbled across just so happens to match reality. That's
Yeah, how light works is
understand how light works.
Yeah, light working is not within contention in physics.
Well, that's because they can't figure it out.
No,
but
they can't figure out the cause.
We understand how light. We have a model for how light interacts with matter, and every experiment that we've done matches perfectly with what we should predict, what it predicts. How is that how we understand light? If every experiment that we've done agrees with our theory, then that means the theory is correct. Unless we find something which doesn't, then
because light is everywhere. You know, the sun comes up somewhere, and all of a sudden, like the room I'm in is lit up.
Sleeping Warrior. To
you know,
go
it's like
into
the I don't think the sun is.
What is the evidence to prove this assertion, in fact, to be true? Sleeping Warrior, Riley, how does your camera work?
We're back to the photons point. Philip said before that light has to go into your eye. Well, prove that that's true. We accept that photons may or may not exist. But how do you know that the photons have to go into your eye for something to be seen?
Because we understand how the light interacts with atoms. We understand how the retina absorbs information and converts it into an image that your brain perceives. We understand this for your camera too, right? What is the sensor in your camera doing? It's absorbing photons.
I agree that you understand the logic, the explanation. My question is, how do you prove that light is going into your eye? For example, the stars. The stars are claimed to be light years away. That is absurd to me because our eyes cannot resolve something so far away when there is things in the way like other planets and all this space and debris. But even the distance itself is that far away that our eyes cannot resolve that. Now, you have somebody called Soundly, who claims that your eye can resolve a single candle flame at 30 miles because he's read it on Google. But there's no evidence that shows that that's true, because I can only just about see Blackpool Tower from 30 miles, and I can tell you now I wouldn't see a candle light from 30 miles. But you expect us to believe that we can see stars from light years away. But, of course, that relies on the light coming to your eye. What's the evidence that proves that light comes to your eye, not that you can just see it with your eye?
Okay, cover up your eye. Can you see anything?
Your hand's in the way, isn't it?
The hand's blocking the light.
Right, but your hand is blocking the light. It's stopping your ability to see.
Because the light's not entering your eye.
No, because your hand's in the way.
Yeah, but now we can
It's
see
blocking
something.
the light from getting into your eye.
No, you're stopping yourself
your
from
camera.
seeing. When you put your hand in front of your eye, you're stopping.
I'm saying that those are the same thing. I'm saying that you can't see because the light is not entering your eye.
But you can see your hand.
Okay,
Yeah,
then
absolutely.
put an eye patch on so that no light gets in.
Now you see the eye patch.
Yeah, you see the inside of the eye patch.
But if you block out all of the lights,
Then you see nothing. You see black,
you
but
see
you still
nothing because there's no photons reaching your eye.
No, you still see black. You still
Exactly.
see black.
You're perceiving black because there's nothing for your brain to process.
Well, what do you think?
For processing
a
black.
black hole? What do you think a black hole is?
Oh,
Am I
let's not go
seeing
into
the
that.
black?
Science fiction is what.
No, but it's a good. But it's a good. Oh, then again,
It's
yeah, it's
fun.
right.
No,
It's fun
it's-
fantasy. It makes for good movie.
We've observed black holes, but they're not going to believe that that's an actual
Yeah,
observation.
no, I just realized. I remember who we were talking to. Shit.
Look, I don't know how else to
there is no
convince you because,
There's no wavelength of black. Let's say it like that.
right,
Do you believe light travels?
of course.
Can you prove
Interesting.
that light travels?
Can I prove that light travels?
Yeah. It's back to the photons argument.
Yeah, of course.
Right.
So it leaves my
Because I can
flashlight.
block its path.
We can measure it.
What is a shadow?
You can still see the object though.
Right, because there's light coming from other places. But if I'm talking about light coming
But
from
that has
a
nothing to do
particular
with the
source,
traveling though. That has nothing to do with traveling. Light is instantly everywhere. Instantly.
it's not.
To go
It's
into
not.
like 186,000 miles per second, you're going to end up with so many light year, it becomes meaningless. These light year calculations are meaningless in nowhere other than that argument. Yeah, but there's a D-Wave computer that it's pointless. It's not relevant because it's too much.
Oh, I'm actually
Well, if you
working on the
deny-
D-Wave computer.
You're
Oh,
what?
really? Is
Another
that so?
I'm working on the D-Wave computer.
That's
Fabian.
cool. That's really cool. Is that so?
Is that
So,
yeah, what's going to give
it's
AI a
completely
soul?
meaningless? It's completely meaningless.
Absolutely. What has the D-Wave computer done for me lately? Why am I still driving a car with gasoline? Why hasn't all of this taken us up a level? We're still operating with cars that have technology from 1908. If you have a transmission in your car, it's 100-year-old technology.
The reason why we don't have that is because we don't understand what's going on in this machine yet.
What? Okay, I don't know where to
Dave,
go
I've
with
got a
that one.
question.
We don't understand the machine that we're using.
Oh, we know how we can read out. So we don't have exactly what it's doing because it's complicated.
Don't say that. That's just insulting. I mean, that's like saying Earth's a sphere because somebody told you it was. You give yourself some credit.
Oh, I mean,
Give
no.
humanity
Give the authority.
credit that we went to the moon.
I didn't say humanity. I
No
said
way.
give yourself credit, man.
Joking,
Give your own
right?
observations
I
credit.
have an
If
experiment.
if it doesn't fit, then it's all right. It's okay.
No,
Like, isn't it crazy to you that all these people think
Let
that
him
the Earth is
respond.
flat and that
Let him
we're all
respond.
nuts?
Well, that's very. That can be the case. Let him respond.
Who?
Fucking Philip.
I don't have to let anyone respond. I'm saying something. I'm not hearing anything. It's like you guys got to start with something. You say Earth's a ball. Show me that ball. Then we can start it. But you can't.
Well,
That
been there,
that
done
means
that. But
stuck.
let
You're
Philip
stuck.
respond about the D-Wave thing.
Despite
Philip.
the fact that you guys are stuck. Okay, D-Wave. What has D-Wave done for anybody? Nothing.
We can't hear you, D-Wave.
Obviously.
Hold on. No. He's got his little
How long
green
did it
thing
take?
popping up, but we.
I Google it real fast. Okay, I'll give you a minute for that.
Oh.
But in the short answer, pretty much nothing. Nothing nature could do.
We don't need
I
to
mean,
hear
it is
your
nature.
voice.
Nothing the
Wait,
human
this is-
body could do.
Philip, can I ask you a question about light?
Sure.
Do you agree that light diminishes the further away it gets?
Dropped. He's had a bit of rough connection, so hopefully be back in a couple of seconds.
Yeah, he was on a bad line. I struggle to hear it.
I want to hear him talk about the D-Wave computer. I've got like a little thumb that I did, so I've got a little piece of software where you can cut out. You normally use it to just cut out people, whereas I cut out the D-Wave computer. It took me about 3 hours, just to cut all the little gaps and stuff out and make it look okay if I was to drop it onto a different image. It took me forever just to cut it out so I had a nice graphic of it. I don't know. I think that's super cool. If you, I don't know, forget the flat Earth stuff. If you can talk about that for a bit, I'll be well chuffed. Hope he comes back.
Do we still have Mark around?
We do. He's on mute at the moment. I don't know if he's still. Yeah, there we go.
Hello, gentlemen.
Whilst we have a lull, sir, have you got any views on light? Because I noticed you didn't speak.
Oh,
No, that was all over. Can you hear me, by the way?
You're a little bit quiet.
Okay, I'm sulking.
You're sulking.
I'm joking. Can you hear me now?
Hey, sorry.
Yeah, we hear you.
My internet just cut out.
No worries. Good to have you
I'm
back.
just trying to get Mark to engage a little bit with
Did you actually, Philip? Did you actually respond to when the bloke asked you about what's it done in my life? Because it looked like we were trying to give a response, but we just didn't hear it.
Oh, it doesn't matter. I don't think I need to respond. What are you saying, Riley?
It would be lovely to know what you actually do, though. I mean, you said you're involved in what you're involved in with that particular piece of equipment.
So we're exactly trying to understand what the D-Wave is. We're trying to understand the dynamics of the D-Wave machine, like what sort of mechanisms are going on underneath the surface to give the results that it gives. So we're programming in a particular model for which we understand the dynamics very well, and it's been and we're just comparing the D-Wave to our theoretical predictions. And if it works, then it means that the D-Wave is actually performing some sort of quantum annealing. That's basically it.
So was it who was the guy that asked the question and then Philip gave the answer? It doesn't really matter.
Oh, I was asking, what has the D-Wave computer done? Like, what's the purpose of all that research and pageantry?
So the idea is to try and create a quantum annealer, which is hopefully, if it works, a much better way of doing very hard computation. I mean, the whole idea is to destroy encryption, I guess, which, that's kind of a whole can of worms that's, it probably won't work based on what I understand, but people are still trying to do it. My interest is more trying to understand the actual physical device itself and how it works. But yeah, I mean, to be perfectly honest, yeah, it's probably not going to be a computer that you use every day. But you know, this company invested how many millions of dollars into it, and so you know, it's a private owned company, so they can do what they want with their money. Huh?
What else do companies do?
Well, they typically try and sell things to people, but for some reason, this DWeb machine doesn't. You know, I think they're more geared towards trying to. Well, I guess it does have applications in my area of research, because if it works, then you basically have a way of doing simulations which are far more sophisticated than what you could do on a normal computer, which would help our understanding of our fundamental understanding of quantum mechanics even more. Maybe help to build new devices which are far more efficient.
For what? For the simulations of what, though? Like, what's
it could help.
Simulating.
I'll give you an example. It could help in medicine. If it makes complex predictions, then it could easily predict more effective medical treatments. For example, I'm just trying to think of something that you can apply it to in human terms. You know, that's just off the top of my head. It's probably not a very great example.
It solves very complex problems.
It can also help detect. It works well with AI that can, you know, stop cyber attacks and so forth. That's one possible application.
Oh, right. Yeah, it's a way of. It's actually kind of more. You could do machine learning with it. Yeah. Have
you seen it? Have you actually been in its presence?
No, unfortunately not.
I mean, just to get into it probably takes about 10 minutes through all those massive thick layers. But I've seen it on a video once and actually going inside it. I think it was on Linus Tech Tips, and it just the mechanism around the thing. The thing itself is obviously looks like an astonishing thing, but just the mechanisms around it are huge.
Because it has to cool everything down to close to absolute zero.
Yeah. Phenomenal. You know, with the lengths they've gone to and the expense poured into it. You know, I really do hope it does turn into something useful.
I do too. But myself personally, in terms of my own research, it's more of a selfish endeavor, just trying to understand what's going on in this thing, because I'm curious about it, and if it does what it says it does, that would be, that'd be really nice to be able to prove, I guess.
Is it like they're probably like $10-15 million? Is it because of materials, what it's made out of?
I think it's the device. The chip is really, really complicated, and so because it's basically it's a tiny chip, but then you also have to pay for refrigeration and the computer system, which actually does the actual measurements of the device too. So it's not something like a single person could ever do, but it's something that, it does these calculations so fast, basically on the order of milliseconds, microseconds, actually, sorry, not even milliseconds, microseconds. So
I think that the money could be used for better things, like let's get that free energy machine in everybody's house.
Oh, don't.
I one of those.
It would be nice. Yes, I certainly wish that one of those things would exist. But
maybe that's what the whole purpose of the deception and the control is about. Stop us realizing the potential energy that could be tapped from our Earth. Maybe that's
quantum vacuum.
Maybe letting
physics
people have
just
that
says
is,
otherwise with regards to free energy.
I'm just thinking unlimited energy is potentially an outcome that, if we got to the truth, if we are considered truth seekers, then it might be the case that you find out that the people we consider bad and evil trying to control us are actually trying to save us from our own demise. If we had unlimited power at our fingertips, that could be disastrous in the wrong hands.
Well,
I'm just trying to give a devil's argument perspective.
Already in the wrong hands.
That's for sure, because they're selling it.
Yeah, I'm just trying to give a devil's advocate argument for why there could be all this deception. And recently, John LeBont's been putting videos out saying, are the controlling elites actually bad? Maybe not. You know, it's just an idea.
Well, there's definitely something in the psychology for someone to want to have that kind of power. I don't think it's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I agree. Actually, can I get back to Riley's question? Because I don't want to sound like I'm distracting or anything.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we were at the point where I was asking you to prove that light has to come into the eye. So we've got to the point where we can't prove what a photon is, and we're now at the point where we're trying to basically, because where we can apply this on real world evidence is, are the stars millions and millions of miles away, or are they as close as they appear? Now the assertion is by science that the light has to come to your eye. What's the evidence that proves that the light does come to the eye that makes us see it?
Wait, I'm confused. So would it also have to go into the camera?
Well, that has a photon receptor, doesn't it?
And how are your eyes different than a photon receptor?
They're not really, but we're still back to then square one of, well, what's a photon?
Right, but you agree that something has to hit the sensor in order for it to read something, right?
Well, I agree
like whether it's a photon or a wave.
How do I think what?
How do you think the eye works? And we'll start from there.
Who are you asking me?
Yeah.
How do I think the eye works? We open the eyelid and then we can see stuff. I don't think photons are hitting the eye. I think that we see stuff because it's there.
Yeah,
but
simple as that.
But what about all the complicated cellular mechanisms that are going on underneath in the eyeball? What is that for?
What about all the word salad?
Oh, hang on. If we understood the eye the way that it sounds, I mean, it sounds silly when I say that we see stuff because it's there. But ultimately, if it was the case that we understood how the eye worked and so well, comprehensively, why do people go blind, and why can blindness not be cured?
Because it's a problem with how the brain communicates with the eye.
Depends. No, it depends on the type of blindness you have, right? So for example, with people with cataracts, I've got part of the eye in the anatomy itself, but it gets hard, right? And you cannot see. And that's where you get you can have surgical removal and get it gone, and you know it's
sure. But I mean, blindness.
Well after that, right? And then you've got damage that can happen to the photoreceptors at the back of the eye. Then you've also got damage that can happen to the connective tissue that links your eyes basically to the back of your brain, right? If that gets damaged, you can also go blind. And the part of the brain that actually does that process, if that gets damaged, you cannot see, or it's impaired in some way. We know.
We know that those are the damages. The problem is we don't know how to fix them, right? Because the brain is really complicated.
Right.
And
so
the nerve
we also know
depending on the issue.
We
on the issue. Some surgery can fix issues.
Okay. Well, yeah, I'm not an expert, but generally speaking.
I was talking in the general concept of blindness being permanent and irreparable rather than a short-term cataract that you could repair. But I meant blindness as in total blindness. But anyway, point being, at the moment, we're at the point where we know that photons exist, but we can't prove that they exist. And we believe that light comes to our eye, and that's the reason for why the stars must be trillions of miles away. But in real world, we see the stars without any, we don't need enhancements to see the stars. But do you think it's logical or reasonable to believe and accept that the stars are as far away as what they are when you know that the limitation of the eye cannot resolve a candle at 30 miles the way that refraction soundly says that it can? I don't think that's reasonable.
Well, I mean, if you consider how bright a star actually is, right? We're this close to the sun, and it's enough to heat up the entire atmosphere of the Earth.
Okay, so how bright are the stars then?
The stars the stars that we see are actually much brighter than our sun.
Okay.
How would you know that? How would you know that? You can't make that assumption.
We can through certain instruments, we can calculate their luminosity. I'll try and find some of those instruments.
The problem is it all works together, right?
Just want to interject. Hold on. So are you suggesting, Natsec, that with a measure of its luminosity, that you would tell me that a star is brighter than the sun? based on its luminosity.
So I'm not going to claim to understand how they actually measure the exact luminosity of the star up close.
But based on any luminosity measurement ever in history, has it ever been the case that any star has had a higher value than the sun ever?
Well, that's why we check these things out, so people look into it.
So is that a yes or no? Have you ever in history, has it ever been measured that a star has a greater value than the sun ever?
Well,
Yes.
I'd imagine so, just on the basis of it, yes, because our sun,
I don't know
our
how,
star
but-
is pretty small.
So let me get this straight.
Our
You're going to
star
tell
is
me that
pretty
a star has
small in the grand scheme of
measured as
things.
being brighter than the sun.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, because
You
they're
do
bigger.
realize that it's the number of photons per surface area, right? And the number of photons per surface area.
Oh,
is
sorry,
spread out
we have to
farther
apply
away.
a formula to
That's-
get it to be brighter. I see. So what we actually see isn't brighter. Factually, it isn't brighter than the sun, but you've just asserted the stars are brighter than the sun. That's double-speak nonsense. They are not brighter than the sun. Why would you ever assert such nonsense?
Because we can measure the distance to the stars.
Oh, so we need to
by other means.
insert
Here we go.
distance.
How
I
do we
see.
measure
So
the
we have
distance
to
of
assume
stars?
a distance to then extrapolate that the stars are brighter than the sun. This is double-speak nonsense. I'll just say this for the audience's benefit only. The stars are not brighter than the sun. If you believe this, you are deluded.
Right, he said we can calculate, we can measure the distance to the stars. Can you tell me how we do that, please?
I don't know how we do it.
How do you? Why did you
Why do
say?
you believe it?
That's why you
do
look
I
into
believe
the
it? Because I
science.
trust astronomers.
Yeah,
Trust
that's
in
why.
your life,
That's why
your
I'm
reality is
currently
based on
right
trust.
now- That's why I'm currently right now looking into the actual science of how these guys do it, like you guys should be doing yourselves. Because this
Also-
information is out there, you can look into astronomy journals and so forth to actually learn their math, learn their instruments and so forth, right? It's out of our particular fields. So that's why we'll contact those fields to see what they have to say on the issue.
Right.
What they've got you to
basic.
believe,
If I-
and what they've
if-
got you
if
to
my mate-
tell
my mate,
us,
right, he's a-
what they've got you to tell
my mate,
us
he's a
is that the
fourth-
sun
Hold
is
on, my
less
mate,
bright
he's a
than the
fourth-
stars. That's
a
what you've
fourth-year
got. Your
mechanic. Hold on.
trust in what they're saying
Hold
has
on, I'm
got
gonna
you
make
to
an
believe
I'm gonna make
that
an
the
analogy.
stars
Hold
are brighter than the sun.
So
That's
my
what you've
mate
asserted
is a
here.
fourth-
I mean,
Hold on,
you
Nathan.
literally,
Nathan, I'm gonna make an
you're tied
analogy.
up so deep in your own
Nathan.
nonsense that you're
Nathan.
asserting that stars are
Nathan.
brighter than the sun.
Nathan,
Yeah, you guys got to
Nathan,
stop with
we're
this, man.
fact-check.
You guys, it's
we're
not
gonna,
your
we're-
words.
I at least am checking into to see exactly how they pull it off. However,
Right.
if my
Pull
mate
it
right,
off.
is
You
a
haven't figured
fourth
it out
year
yet.
How they pull it
mechanic,
off.
right? Because that's a lot of bloody literature to look into, right? But anyway, so my mate, he's a fourth year mechanic.
Who is this guy?
I'm going to take his word over how car works or something specific about cars, right? Over my ignorance on cars, right?
Yeah, but hang on, hang on.
If
He
you
can
if your
take
car
that-
gets
hang on.
bust, you'll
Hang on,
take
stop.
it to a mechanic.
Stop.
You
He can
won't.
take
No, I
the
won't
broken
stop.
part off. He can take the broken part off, give it to you, and say, "This is broke because this doesn't work anymore." And he can show you
Yeah, you
tangible.
consult him. Yes, you consult him like I'm consulting that field. It's
No,
what you
But
do.
they're a tangible
That
thing.
field
A
is
car
not
is a
true.
physical thing that you
Criticism.
can take apart
Right.
in
The
your
difference
hand.
is it's observational versus empirical.
Right.
Correct.
Exactly.
So then you have to basically
contact
go
that
into an epistemological argument about what is observable reality.
No,
What
you
is
don't.
empirical? What is observable? What do you take
No, you
as?
don't.
Yes, you do.
That- No, you don't.
Because
That's
there's
if
a
I
difference
had, if I
between
had
having
to tell
something
you.
physically here and something that I observe through an indirect measurement, right? Like if I
No,
can
no, no.
pick something up, there's a difference between that and then measuring, let's say, the photons coming off of the object.
When I have to convince you of something, that's where the problems occur. When I experience and see evidence, I'm good with that. I process it and I have my own truth. When we try to like push truth on someone else, all this extraneous, all this salad is what's really getting in the way and not letting it. You're not letting your point or anyone's point get through.
Well, just a few moments ago, I mean, you said that you trust your gut over evidence, right?
No, I didn't say that.
You did.
I
You said when it comes to
I didn't
Sandy
say I
Hook.
trusted my guts over evidence.
That's what I
What,
said.
what evidence do I have except for like what people have told me and some videos? And that's pretty much at what everybody has, unless you were there. I wasn't there, but I also heard a news report.
So then you have to define what evidence actually is.
Yeah, YouTube videos.
Well, hold on.
I heard a
I've
story.
just said this already,
and
and
the
I
story
want to
doesn't
make
match up with what we see.
Okay,
exactly what we
then
see
you did
is
have
what's
evidence,
relevant,
then
and what you've got, what the conclusions you've been drawn to are to state things like the stars are brighter than the sun. That's what you're stating based on your epistemological exploits that
By
you've
the
gone
energy
through to
they've
come
put
to these
out.
conclusions based on distances you don't know. You know, you're
By the energy
stating
they've put out.
doublespeak.
I
By
provided,
methods that I don't understand.
You're saying the
don't
stars
get it.
put out energy?
for example, I put in a fantastic
is-
link that gets into some detail from the Australian Telescope National Facility, right? And it talks about the luminosity of stars and it goes semi-detail of the math and so forth. And of course, you go into further
It sounds like you don't understand it.
details of certain things.
Do I need
Yeah,
to
it's
understand
outside
it
of
to
my
be- for
area,
it to be true?
yes. Yeah, it's outside of our areas in particular, but
So-
that's why we consult that area for
Right.
what they have to say on the issue. If I want to talk about geology, I'm going to consult first geologists and their area or field.
Right, like an
That should be
astronomer is
obvious.
going to come to me to understand quantum dynamics.
Right, but I don't need to go to anybody to know that the stars are less bright than the sun. But you're telling me the complete opposite.
Luminosity is basically the measurement of the energy output by a sun. If there's a sun that's like 20 times bigger than ours, it's going to have a greater luminosity than our sun. Empirically, it would.
Right.
It's
So
bigger.
how do you prove,
It's got more. It's got more stuff to work with.
how
This
do you
gets
prove
better.
that the
So let me
stars
get this straight.
So you
So
have
not
okay,
only
so here,
are the stars brighter than the sun, they are bigger than the sun. So
Nathan, I can explain it. Hold on, just give me a second. So you're right. You have to have, because if you just do an extrapolation, so let's say I know what the intensity of the light is here on Earth, right? And then I could, in principle, do an extrapolation because I know that the star is a point source. And then I can say, okay, assume that the luminosity is comparable to the sun, then that means blah, blah, blah. It's going to be however many million light years away, assuming that you use attenuation of the source of light, right? Like that's what you're saying. But if you have an independent way of measuring the distance to compare the two, and you see that they line up, then you can conclude that I know the distance is far away, and I understand how light's intensity decreases with distance, and they exactly match up. And so I can come to the conclusion that the sun is brighter and it's farther away.
Right, but hang on. We need to address the question, which is how do you know the star's distance?
Yes, exactly. And I understand that I don't know how one actually does this.
So then you have a premise that's based on a conjecture that you can't prove, correct?
I can't prove it at this very moment, no.
excellent. Thank you for admitting it. That's superb. So
And
the
it
rest is
sounds
pie in
just
the
like the
sky then.
argument
The rest
for
is
the
just
light.
pie in the
But how
sky.
about-
We can just
how
completely
you
ignore it then,
consult the
basically.
research in that
Just
field,
pie in the
It doesn't
sky.
mean that the
Until you
information
dismiss
doesn't
something.
exist.
So just to
right?
be
Like,
clear, we have a bit of pie in the sky that we
Like,
can
for-
insert if we choose to, or we can accept the obvious and observable nature of what we are presented with, which is to say we look up at the stars and they are definitely not bigger than the sun, and they are definitely not brighter than the sun. But
Because they're
you
far
can
away.
insert some pie in the sky and come to a different conclusion if you want to.
Right. So
I
you
can consult
I
experts who have
do
actually
suggest
done the
instead of-
measurements
and-
themselves.
right.
Yeah.
So you say
Instead of
because the
that being
stars are far away.
conjecture, you guys are using conjecture by its very definition. You're making opinions based on nothing.
Sorry, I'll just make my statement clear again. Not an opinion, a fact based on every single day of my existence on this plane that we call Earth. Every time I look up at the sun, fact, it is bigger than the stars. That's a fact. Every time I look at that sun, my God, it's definitely brighter than the stars. This is absolutely and unequivocally not conjecture. The stars are definitely
No, of
smaller
course.
than the sun, and the sun is
So
definitely
have
brighter
you
than the
consulted
stars. This
Have you
is something
consulted an
unequivocal.
astronomer?
I can
Can I-
state
can-
without
can I-
saying it's conjecture
National security.
at all.
What's your name? National security.
Just call it Wonk. Call me Wonk.
Can I
Wonk.
speak to Nathan? for
Why
a
do you
second?
keep referring to other people? Like you just keep saying like
Because
check
they're
with this guy, check with all these
experts in
other
the field.
people. What do you know?
Like how I'm more invested in biomedical research, and Philip is involved in what was it, Philip?
Quantum dynamics. Can you hear me?
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
We is somewhat. Yeah. What was it again?
Quantum dynamics.
Yeah, quantum dynamics and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
If we were
I
to know
love my
about each other's
dog.
fields, we'd ask each other. Or if I want to know stuff about my cat, right, my little Snoogums, I'm going to take him to a vet because that person's trained in that particular area for veterinary care and all that fun stuff, right?
I get what
That's
you're
what
saying.
you do.
Right.
That's what you
But
do.
doesn't mean we can't understand what's happening.
I
at the
need
vet.
training, do I, to know that the sun's bigger?
But it does require a level of formal education to grasp the nitty gritty details. It
Where does
does.
that information come from? People who do know the answers?
I can look at scientific journals and say the luminosity of neutron stars, as I'm trying to find right now. But there could be jargon and certain concepts that I'm not versed into because it's out of my particular area, right?
They better
That's
just trust
why
it
I'm
implicitly,
concerned.
then, eh?
Just trust those people.
Better just trust
Well,
it
you guys-
implicitly,
why
then,
do
eh?
you guys trust me?
Why do you put your
The
trust-
answers are somewhere?
Yeah.
That's like me saying we're right because I said so.
No, it's not.
No,
Because
the
Yeah,
standard of evidence we're using is of high quality.
right.
What is
So
the problem
basically,
with
we're
not
using
understanding
actual-
what the sun is? Tell me, let me ask you a question. What is your problem with not understanding something? Why does your world?
I don't have a
But
problem
we-
with
down?
understanding something.
Yeah, me and Philip are both acknowledging our ignorance on this particular area, right? Freely.
You are the
We're
ones
okay
who
with
say you
that.
understand.
But we
Specifically,
will.
your ignorance being that you don't know
We're
how
not-
far these things are away, correct?
We don't.
I acknowledge
I
that.
don't
Okay.
know.
Nathan, I
You don't know.
acknowledge that
We don't know.
That's
Nobody
okay.
knows. But
given
nobody
the
knows.
information that we
That
have
doesn't
with our own
mean-
observation, that it's incomplete. We don't know. I know the conclusion, but I don't know all of the evidence.
And that means nobody knows, is what you're really saying.
I don't know I don't know the specific details of the electronics of how my computer works, right?
Yeah, don't
But
worry about that.
that
We're just
doesn't
talking
mean-
about the
that doesn't-
stars
that
and how
doesn't
far away
mean-
they are.
that
Don't worry about your
doesn't mean
computer.
that guys
Let's
with
stick with the
computers
subject
and
for a
IT,
sec.
that they
Listen,
don't know
Stars,
what they're
how
talking
far away they
That's
are,
fine.
you don't know. That's the point here, right? You get that?
What I'm trying to get at, is why does your world break down as soon as you don't know something? What is the problem with it? It's okay to not know.
Yeah, I'll
But you
try
need
it
to-
on
we're
you,
telling
to
you
assume
Haunted. Hey,
someone
Haunted.
does know.
Hey, Haunted. Just so we can try it. Show him how it
We're
works.
doing conjecture.
He's very
by its
triggered.
very definition.
Let's just try with Haunted. How far are the stars, Haunted? Do you know?
I don't know.
Depends on the star.
You don't know. What about you, Sleep and Worry? Do you know how far the stars are?
It would depend on the star.
I'll get to you in that second.
If you could give me a star to look at, I can actually consult the literature to see how far away.
You
it
can
is.
look it up
I
on
don't know off the top
Google.
of my head. That's interest.
This guy's
Let's do
great.
that.
But you should look it up.
All right, let's just do that.
So
then.
let's find me a star.
Let's focus on Orion's belt, because Orion is a well-recognized and easy-to-find constellation, and we can find that there are two stars very close and in that area. One's called Betelgeuse and one's called Sirius. Sirius is about 6 light years away, but Betelgeuse is 460 light years away. Relatively speaking, that parallax should be observable. Guess what we don't find when we try and measure the parallax?
So hold on, you do know how far away they are.
According
Yes.
to your details, yeah.
So what was
I
it
just
you had
asked
to know
you to
the
identify
distance
a
of?
star that we couldn't know.
Hang on,
yeah.
let me re-ask the question, because it got lost. If Sirius is about 6 light years away, 5, 7, depending on where you go, you get different values. But let's say it's 6 light years away, and Betelgeuse, which is right next to it, is 460 light years away from memory. Why don't we see any parallax from that?
Depends on how far apart they are in terms of angles.
And
No,
how
one is
far-
millions
how
of
many
light
years?
years miles away, and the other
From
one's
each
quite
other?
close. Why don't we see any parallax from Betelgeuse to Sirius?
You guys understand what that means?
Have you
Parallax?
observed the parallax?
Just so
Have
everyone
you
knows,
observed no
parallax is
parallax?
like when you're driving down the highway and the cars, kind of everything's passing, and then you see one thing kind of moving faster than the other thing, and you see the actual difference.
I understand what parallax is,
Right.
but the
I
problem
didn't
is
think the guy with the rifle.
Okay, well, it depends on how far you actually travel, right? How much parallax you see relative to how far away things are.
Nope, standing still, looking up, nothing.
But I can't see parallax unless I move relative to the objects.
And can you tell me why those numbers even matter, like the distance? I'm curious, and I'm not. Yeah, I would love. Well, actually, I really could care less how far. You know what those like why it even matters, like, you know, how far. I think it's a matter of size, really. I think we're dealing with small objects that are close, because I don't think my eye can see a light year.
So
whatever the light year is.
It matters. It matters if the objects are the size of the sun and putting off the amount of energy as the sun or more.
Isn't that an assumption? Without a
How is
reference?
that?
Because you can't know the size of something without a reference. Absolutely, 100% can't know it.
Well, you need to know.
But you can measure the energy output.
No, but you need to know the distance to know its size. Angular size, guys. We've had this conversation millions of times.
There's no output. Output from a star. How could you localize one star while the other ones are sitting right there and know that it's that one?
Because I see it because it's there.
That makes no sense. I see it.
I see it because it's there.
Sirius, and it's not the one next to Sirius.
Hold on one second, guys.
Because it comes to the same spot every night.
Can you hear us, Jazz? Hello?
Hey, Nathan. Are there any sugary type substance on the
Sorry.
I got a question. It has to do with space. How do you know you're moving?
How do I know that I'm moving?
Exactly. Without any reference to tell you that you're moving.
There is an acceleration, right? If there is an acceleration, then you should be able to measure that.
And then, but how would you know the acceleration
Let him
you're
answer.
floating?
You gave him like 3 seconds to give you an answer.
Right. So the question was, how do you know we're moving? And the distinction is, when you're moving with a constant velocity, you can't tell that you're moving. So you need to know if there's an acceleration on you.
Right.
This is Newton's law.
I understand it. Stop right there. I understand it.
Okay.
How do you know you're traveling? Let me rephrase it. How do you know what you're in is moving? Not sensation.
Your position changes.
You don't know. You don't know if you're moving with a constant velocity. You don't know you're moving unless you have an external reference. But then you can't determine if you are moving or the external reference is moving.
So you really don't. They both cancel out then.
No, it's not a well-defined question physically, because there's nothing. There's
no
question.
That's a good point.
That you can do to determine whether it's you that's moving or the object itself that's moving, because there's nothing in the laws of physics.
So that would make it pretty difficult to travel through space, wouldn't it?
Well, the difference is we're not moving with a constant velocity. We're moving around the sun.
I'm talking about what I've been told NASA doesn't make sense to me. And I had a physics teacher, a guy with Q clearance and all the bells. He designs F-15 radar arrays that do like the thermonuclear ones that you can see through walls with heat register radars. He told me one day, he put his hand on my shoulder because we had this big conspiracy discussion years ago. There's no such thing as interstellar space travel. Now go home. I take care of one of his cars. And I thought about that for a while, and I was like, wow, why did he make that statement? And just earlier today, I was like, how the hell would you know if you're moving in space without any kind of reference point? And I get the whole thing, like, you know, acceleration, then you even off and all that stuff. but it makes no sense to me if there's no up, down, left, right, and no referencing anything. Nor in the videos we see with people that are suspended in midair, and they say you could, if you're sleeping on the floor, you're technically on the ceiling, and those who are on the ceiling are on the floor, and vice versa. But yet every time we see people, their heads through, I think it's their lymphatic system, always determine what direction up is. You know, their body may be angled, they may be kind of hanging off the wall a little bit, but their head always goes the same way.
And that's because there's a force acting on you, which is pulling you down to the ground.
No.
Flat Earth, round Earth, there is a force.
Electricity is the one true force in the universe.
Sure, call it whatever you
else.
want, but there is a force which pulls you down.
There's a force that pulls you down.
Yes.
Okay, sure. Whatever you got to say.
No, because
you're not in space, though, and you should be looking at that because it doesn't.
So he
up.
said there's.
At the end of the day, it doesn't add up.
There's no interstellar travel. Doesn't interstellar mean between stars?
Sure.
Okay.
Without Earth,
just
in the
want to
background,
clarify.
You know, look at it like that. Without the Earth image that we always see.
No, I mean like interstellar literally means between stars.
I know what it means.
So like there is no space travel between stars, right? Because the nearest star is really far away. Maybe that could be a reason.
But wouldn't we would always be between stars though, technically, right?
Yeah, of course. Technically the Earth is between, you know, the Earth is between the sun and some other star at any given point, right?
According to photographs. You know, you're waging a lot on photographs and information without zero experience. That's all I'm saying. It seems like a risky proposition. I think the flat earthers are just saying, you know what? We're looking at this with the critical eye, and it doesn't make sense. We've all grown up with NASA. We've seen the videos. We've seen
I understand that it doesn't make sense.
The parade, but
I think the problem is that you're so close-minded. There are two issues. You become either so close-minded nothing will convince you at all. Or you could become too open-minded that your brain falls out.
I think the issue is
you approach every new subject with that like quote, because that's a closed-minded statement.
No, I approach.
Why don't you try freedom?
How so?
I approach a new subject by trusting the people who have actually looked into it before myself.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a matter of trust.
What you're saying is we shouldn't trust you for anything then, because you have no respect for your own authority.
No,
I
have
go to
respect.
other people, but here you are talking.
I'm defer. Look, if I'm curious about something, I'm going to read and try and understand it for myself. But I'm not going to start from scratch and then build up from there. I'm going to look at the body of work that has been done before me by people who
started from scratch.
Right. Well, the whole thing is started from scratch, and then people, because you can't build up from scratch and in a lifetime's worth of work, you can't discover every other discovery that has been done. Right? You can't start from scratch. No, you build upon it. It's not that it's not original. It's just things progress because you accept what has been done before, and then you build on it, and you try and you test it. Because when you first grapple with the material, you have to say, "Hey, does this make sense?" And then if it doesn't,
but it doesn't make sense anymore. It doesn't make sense anymore.
It doesn't make sense.
Maybe it's the technology. No, don't say that.
Yes.
It's not about making
it makes sense to me.
It's just I'm not comfortable with this information.
Okay.
And you should be too. I don't think you're being intellectually honest with yourself.
But what do you mean you're not comfortable with this information?
I mean, I've talked to experimentalists I've talked to people all the time.
Hold on. What does he? Before you go into that, what does he mean? What do you mean by being uncomfortable with the response?
Hang on, Dad, 1 second. Yeah, hang on 1 second. My headphones just cut out.
Okay.
Oh.
So can I, whilst he's out, can I ask Philip, do you know the distance to the sun?
What I meant by you guys are uncomfortable with this information. I'm sorry, you guys are not comfortable.
You've got
be
a lot of
uncomfortable
background
with this
noise.
information.
It's a screech. Wait, hold up. We got like a screech coming in.
Shit. Hang on.
Philip?
Yeah, the distance to our sun's about, we're probably smack bang on, 149.6 million kilometers.
How do you know?
Not a kilometer.
Just
Because of the calculations they've done.
How do you know that? How do you know the distance to the sun?
Transit of Venus.
How do you know the distance to Venus?
The Venus and the sun. Kepler's law and the transit of Venus across the sun. That's all you need to know.
No, that gives you a ratio. It gives you a scale. It doesn't give you the distance.
Kepler's law gives you a scale, and then the transit of Venus gives you one of the scales which you need to solve the equation.
No, the transit of Venus gives you a scale. It doesn't give you a distance.
Transit of Venus gives you a Kepler's law gives you another scale. The two scales combine to give you two numbers: the distance from the sun to Venus and the distance from the sun to the Earth.
It's still a scale. It's not a distance.
No, because you have two equations and you have two unknowns.
But again, it's not a distance. It's still a scale.
No, I'm telling you, both give you scales, and then when you combine them,
Scales based on what?
scales based on observations.
Of what? What's the distance?
Look,
You need
Kepler's law was deduced from observing planets in the sky.
You're running around.
Now we're
You're
getting
running
somewhere.
around circles right now.
So
You
what
need
were
to-
the
No,
other,
Clem,
what were
he's
the other
running
observations
around.
that you
I'm
used
not.
to make these deductions? What other observations? So we got to the transit of Venus. What came before
And
that?
then you look at the observation of planets from the seasons during the years, and you observe what they do in the sky.
So we deduce the value of this distance by observing other planets. Wow, that seems like a proper circle jerk.
It's exactly a circle jerk.
That's oh man, it's ironic to say, like, Philip, you do have a promising career in this field.
Can I just, as the show closes out, can I just say to Slice Barcane, you guys don't understand what angular size is. You guys think that you can calculate the distances to the planetary motions by looking at things like angular size, yet refusing to accept that you need to know the actual size to get the distance. And none of us know the actual size to any of these things up there because we can't get there. It's all nonsense.
And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in and hopefully for sharing this debate. And of course, a massive thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. If you've not done so already, be sure to like, comment, share and subscribe. I've been Nathan Oakley and I will see you all in the next video.